Mark your calendars for January 17th when the must-see film September 5 hits theaters. This film follows the true story of the ABC sports crew and their coverage of the dreadful terrorist attack at the 72 Munich Summer Games. With me today is the film's director, Tim Fehlbaum, and star John Magaro. Tim, John, how are you guys doing today?
All right.
I'm
Thanks for
doing
having
great.
us.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Now, to start off, Tim, this is kind of an untold side of the 72 games that we haven't really seen much. What made you want to tell the story from the perspective of the ABC sports crew?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There have been movies about the subject already, but I think hasn't been told yet is, and what also we only found out during an intense research is what an important part actually the media played on that day
Hmm.
and how it was a turning point in media history. And it was a conversation that we had in research with the real Jeffrey Mason. That's a character portrayed in the film by John Magaro. Um, that inspired the idea of telling it entirely through that perspective, through the perspective from a broadcast control room and through the perspective from a bunch of sports broadcasters that had to make the switch from reporting
Hmm.
the Olympics to reporting on the crisis on that day and listening to his story and what he experienced on that day and what challenges they faced. That sounded so interesting that we for it made us consider the idea like telling the story entirely from that perspective.
Yeah. Well, and it's definitely a very unique perspective for sure. And now, John, you actually take on the role of Jeffrey Mason. Can you tell us just a bit about this character and what was it like getting to work with the real life Jeffrey Mason to prepare for this role?
Yeah, so Jeff Mason in our story is a young, ambitious producer. He's brought to the 72 Olympics under Rune Arledge, who's played by Peter Sarsgaard. Um, he's trying to make his way, he's trying to make a name for himself. And on this day, he's tapped to lead the program, just thinking it's going to be sports broadcast. And then obviously
Hmm.
things change and he has to cover this tragedy that's unfolding. I mean, a big part of it was talking to the real Jeffrey Mason, who was such a valuable resource, and he made his memories and his thoughts and how he was feeling that day readily available for us.
Hmm.
And then he was also able to get me into control rooms, which was really important to learn how to call a live broadcast because
Yeah.
that's such a vital piece of the film.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Tim, along with directing, you co-wrote September 5, spending months researching the events of that day. What was this process like? Were there any sources you found more helpful than others?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I really enjoyed that process. That was also one of the most important lessons that I learned from making that movie is how important perspective is in a way, because we're telling it from a very distinctive perspective, but that also allowed us to go really deep into research in that field. And yeah, of course, as I mentioned, the most important source was the eyewitness, Jeffrey Mason, who experienced it firsthand. Then we were lucky enough to talk to two more eyewitnesses. Jimmy Scheffler, who was a runner, he was one of these runners that had to smuggle he was called the mule. He was trying to get the fill material past the police barricades. And then there was Sean McManus, the son of Jim McKay, who we talked to, who experienced that as a teenager in the control room while his father was hosting into the cameras next door. And then Jim McKay and Rue Knowledge, these people, they all have written, dedicated a whole chapter on that day in their biographies. And on top of that, of course, seeing and studying we did receive a lot of the footage of what ABC sent on that day.
Hmm.
So studying that also helped us to reimagine what would have happened accordingly in the control room while this footage was sent.
Yeah. And I will say, I got to see this movie already. I loved it. It's kept
Thank
me on
you.
the edge of my seat. Working in TV, it's very interesting to get to see those behind the scenes, how things worked in 72. Um, it's a great movie altogether. I definitely recommend it for everybody to watch. Now,
Thank,
John, Tim, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with me today. September 5 releases in theaters nationwide on January 17th.
thank you.
Thank you.